The neighbors were organized and they hired a hotshot attorney from Denver. They set their sights on Glamping Guy to take him out. They nearly succeeded, winning one of two public hearings and almost a second. But Glamping Guy won in the ends, my friends, for glamping itself and for my glamping operation. Let me sum up the details in today's video. You've heard me say it before, glamping is the sexiest asset class in real estate. It's new, it's exciting, it's fun. Something I love just as much as helping myself is helping you, landowners, develop safe, legal, and profitable glamping operations on your private property. That's what Glamping Guy is all about, and videos like this is one of those journeys of my journal of my journey. Whatever journey you're on in this developmental glamping journey, I have a lot to share with you. So like this and follow this page, but also go over to glampingguy.com and like and follow me over there. Give me your email address and we'll start this glamping journey together. See, the problem with this new and sexy world of glamping is that we disrupt conventional processes, and I certainly stepped over conventional thinking here. I may love glamping, and my guests definitely love me for sharing my private property with them, and businesses love the fact that I'm bringing people into the neighborhood and into the community, but there are others with a mixed bag of support, particularly government and neighbors. Government entities have their codes and regulations that they need to enforce, and neighbors don't necessarily enjoy the idea of a glamping operation down the block from them. In the land development world, we call this mitigation. Glamping impacts the surrounding environment in many ways. Compared to most of the developments the government has to deal with, especially in my area where houses are popping up left and right like weeds, the impact of 8 glamping units on 6.5 acres of beautiful country land, and that's not too bad. It's sort of petty. This has led to development in my county that has largely been administratively approved, meaning I took care of all the impacts that my glamping operation may have had. I installed a septic system inspected by the health department. I wrote letters to the Fish and Wildlife that mitigated the Preppel's jumping mouse impact. I consulted with my county's traffic department and the state's water courts. And neighbors are all notified of this work, and all the documentation is made public. And 2 of my 3 applications had no neighborhood opposition. Now that all changed with my 3rd application, a modification of my 1st, when a small group of neighbors locked arms and opposed my efforts. Let me explain that application as well as the position of my opposition. Then the public hearing process and the conclusion that this long journey to validating my glamping operation ended up. My application for this permit was actually a modification of one of those administratively approved. In 2022, I was awarded a special use permit for a recreation camp here in Colorado. The actual permit that I received did not mention tents as a glamping structure, but the site development plan did. It created some confusion when I happened upon a nice RV. I asked if I could swap it out for one of my tents. My planning department said, put it up on your site development plan. They didn't really say no. And I went ahead and swapped it out. Boom, I got a notice of violation with an ultimatum. Either put the tent back or apply for a modification of my special use. And I chose the latter. Now, most counties are like my county out there. They don't have the resources to sit down on Airbnb and scope out all the illegal operations out there. And there are plenty of illegal operations out here in El Paso County. I'm likely the most legal. How do they even grow to care about my little glamping operation? Well, after my install of my RV in one of my glamping spots, one of my neighbors called the planning department expressing concern that I was growing into something broader than my original permit. And that concern leads me to my next phase of this development, my opposition. Concern really is putting it politely. This neighbor was not really concerned. She was blatantly trying to shut me down. So when I rolled in the RV, it was custom built. It was actually very nice. I thought it was an improvement to the neighborhood. She called, not me, but the county to complain. Now, hindsight is 2020, and if I were to rewind time, I would have taken my neighbor much more seriously. I didn't at the time because, frankly, I assumed my other neighbors would see right through this neighbor's hypocrisy. I mean, really, right now, today, she has a dozen awful-looking garden beds with trash all over her yard, and she looks over my fence at my beautiful tents and my operation and says, what an awful neighbor. So as I was working on the details of my application, my neighbor wrote over 100 letters to people who never even drove by my operation, probably didn't even know I existed. And in the end, she gathered a small number of others to grow upset over my glamping operation. Most of my neighbors probably went on with their merry life, and I actually had a couple turn up to support me. But that's honestly all water under the bridge. In the county's eyes, opposition is opposition. And out of respect to the greater neighborhood, my case rose to a public hearing, which is my next phase of this drama. But before I get into the public hearing process, let me be clear on something. I'm actually thankful for my neighbor. Yes, she's a hermit who's bitter and angry about all sorts of things in life, but her opposition has actually helped me legitimize my glamping business. If I had no opposition at all, I probably would have gone my merry way and building and developing my illegal operation. Sure, it cost me a lot of money to hire lawyers and get those expensive permits, but in the end, I have a much more valuable property and business. So in a way, I'm kind of thankful for the thorn in my side called neighbor opposition. Anywho, let's get on with the next phase of the drama, my public hearing. Now this makes it sound like a trial, and in a way it is. There is a whole world of land use law out there you probably didn't even know existed, and it can be overwhelming. And when you get issued violations from the government, you feel like you're a criminal running a drug lab or something in your basement. And at times you feel like giving up. But keep the faith, my glamping friends. You're running an outdoor hospitality business that is bringing great joy into people's lives and is totally legit. You're cracking the code. You're figuring out this exciting and demanding business, disrupting markets and engineering a business that's good for the community, not bad for it. You just have to make the case for it, which is what I did. There were 2 meetings placed on the calendar, the Planning Commission on June 6th and the Board of County Commissioners on June 27th. I even had to post a sign in my front yard announcing it. I hired a lawyer and my neighbor hired a lawyer. And here's how the 2 meetings went down. The Planning Commission is a local government body that is responsible for developing and maintaining the master plan of the county, which outlines long-term goals and strategies for land use and development. Members are appointed volunteers who tend to care about the community. Now, honestly, I expected a gentlemanly debate over whether or not my glamping operation met the criteria laid out by the county. Me on one side, my neighbors on the other, and we'd see the American way unfold before us all. Didn't go that way. Instead, my neighbor and the lawyer they hired banked all the opposition on 2 things. 1, I'm a law-breaking rebel doing whatever the hell I want, and 2, I'm breaking the 70-year-old covenant that forbid glamping anywhere in the neighborhood. Now, my legal counsel stuck with the strict land use law. I had 1 violation with the county, and that was the only violation that the Planning Commission was concerned, or should be concerned about. And the county is not the enforcement arm of neighborhood covenants. There were 7 criteria that I needed to abide to, and those are the criteria we stuck with. My neighbor's legal counsel, he dug in and he dug in deep. So did one of my neighbors. A good 90% of their preparation was an attempt to paint a narrative of me as some willy-nilly renegade and even a liar trying to ruin the neighborhood. Now, in the debate world, we call this ad hominem, which is Latin for on the man. They attacked me personally. And frankly, the Planning Commission fell for it. They were just as cruel and vicious, assuming me to be an inconsiderate rule-breaking jerk who shouldn't be allowed to do anything. And in the end, I was voted down 7-2. The recommendation was to disapprove my special use modification. The Board of County Commissioners is the governing body of a county responsible for making decisions on various local governmental matters, including land use applications. The Board of County Commissioners are elected officials who oversee departments such as planning and zoning, and they make decisions on land use policies. They are the ultimate authority on glamping land use permits. There were 3 weeks between the public hearings, and I actually reached out to my opposition. I probed their thoughts and asked if some sort of compromise could be made. Developers typically don't do that, but I felt like something perhaps could be worked out. And honestly, I feel like that's being a good neighbor. I don't like them telling me to pound sand, but I do sincerely feel like that shouldn't be reciprocated. I reached out, and unfortunately, nothing could be resolved. My opposition insisted that I was a liar and a bad dude, and I didn't deserve to be allowed to glamp. But that didn't stop me from calling in reinforcements. Not all my neighbors were against me, so I called up those who were supportive. They wrote letters and even showed up to voice their support. The president of the American Glamping Association wrote a glowing letter on my behalf, and the president of the Chamber of Commerce attended and gave praise to Monument Glamping. I had a developer friend speak up for me, a local home builder. My insurance agent even showed up, and he happens to live in the same neighborhood just up the creek from me. Members of my family spoke up too, showing how awesome our property was and how awesome it would be to turn into a glamping operation. With the Board of County Commissioners, we knew it came down to 1 of 7 criteria, number 2 in my list. Criteria number 2 of my special use application reads, the special use will generally be in harmony with the character of the neighborhood and will generally be compatible with the existing and allowable land uses in the surrounding area. What did my opposition harp on? Well, you guessed it, glamping bad, glamping guy bad. The lawyer even cited my glamping guy videos, trying to paint the picture of me bragging all over town about all the money I'm making. And who cares about the neighborhood? Again, he brought up the code violations and the covenants as if they mattered. My lawyer stuck to the criteria. Their lawyer stuck to fallacious attacks 90% of the time. I honestly believe that if their lawyer actually stuck to the criteria, instead of spending so much time attacking me personally, they would have won. But in the end, they lost. The glamping guy won. But it was a nail-biting win, let me tell you. Which brings me to number 4, the vote. At the end of a public hearing, the chair declares the public comment session closed, and the commissioners discuss and decide the fate of monument glamping in El Paso County. Now, in my case, one of the commissioners was absent, which left 4 that held the fate of my glamping operation in their hands. I needed a 3-1 decision to win. A 2-2 split would fail the application, and I'd have to go back to the original special use and stick with 8/10. And for about an hour and a half during the session, I thought I had lost. Unlike the Planning Commission, the Board of County Commissioners asked very few questions. We were surprised then that right out of the gate, one of the commissioners put forth a motion to reject the modification, and it was seconded. A vote would have likely killed the application right then and there, and that really sent off the other 2 commissioners. If this were 5 commissioners, the discussion would have been about why they should vote either yay or nay, but the discussion was instead with the county lawyer of what would happen if a 2-2 decision was the result. Well, the chair then broke for a recess, and I could tell they were trying to figure out what to do. And we were all just watching. Neighbors were kind of gloating that this was so close to failing, and friends were talking as if they were surprised that it went south so fast. Me, I was praying, folks. I was also reeling. Thinking of how this would change so much of my vision for my property and glamping itself. There was about 30 minutes of high anxiety, which, well, is why I just sat there and prayed, thinking one way or the other I'd have to settle for what this body decided. Now, after the recess, the commissioner who seconded the motion rescinded her motion. So the opportunity of a 2-2 fail never came to a vote. One of the other commissioners who actually wanted this to pass put forth a motion to accept the application along with the conditions we put forth. Now here's a ninja move, if I do say so myself. Really can't take credit for it because it was my legal counsel who told me that I should do this. And that was self-imposed conditions. Keep that in mind if you're a glamping developer and you ever end up in a public hearing like this. The neighbors were all bad glamping guy, and refused to compromise. So we compromised without them. We put forth conditions that limited the size of our venues and the venue types, sort of giving them a little without them giving any. This is exactly the reasoning of the commissioner who rescinded her second to the motion, that because of the conditions proposed by the applicant in rebuttal, she believed it was in compliance with the criteria and should be granted. They took a vote and we won 3-1, which leads me to number 5, the conclusion. Man, what a drama. But now I have my 3rd special use locked and loaded in my permitted pocket, and I'm off to site development, where I'll build out the most exciting glamping operation on my private property. But before I close, let me emphasize 3 points. First, this is the American process. Public hearings exist for a reason. Opposing views of what is good or bad for the neighborhood will happen, and this is why we have public hearings. Second, and this is more important, the process validates the business, and it will yours. I see glamping owners quiver in fear at their first violation or opposing neighbor, or they fly under the radar, never getting properly permitted in their jurisdiction. Don't settle for either of those. In the end, like me, you could be fully permitted and welcoming strangers on your private property and making a living off it and enjoying outdoor hospitality. So finally, it's sort of a conclusion. Therefore, embrace the process. Don't get nasty about it. Don't take offense when the opposition gets nasty themselves. I actually followed the meetings and shook hands with my neighbor who called me a liar and hugged another neighbor who did the same. The hearing concluded, and honestly, now we could all get on with our lives. And like I said before, I would have lived with a failure just the same as a win. I expect the same for my neighbors. So if you're a landowner who wants a piece of the glamping action, you have got to follow me. Not just here on the social media platform, but send me your email and get subscribed to my website. I have classes right now, and I have plans for more and more resources for landowners set on building a safe, legal, and profitable glamping operation on their private property. So till the next drama, I'm Chris Jube, the glamping guy. We'll see you next time.